Robservations with Robert Meyer Burnett.
I think that stories are the greatest way that we can convey the truths of human existence to one another. How do we explain what happened in our days? How do we explain our feelings? How do we explain our experiences? We tell stories. I mean, it's not hard to figure out. That's what we do. And in telling a story, why do stories work? Well, they work because they touch upon shared experiences we all understand. Like, for instance, if you say, today I went to the grocery store. We all understand the milieu that is the grocery store. We understand that there's a parking lot there, and there are people with shopping carts, and you have to watch out where you're going because you might hit somebody or back into somebody. And we realize that we have to go into a supermarket that's full of all of these things, and there's different aisles of food, and people are going to and fro, and you have to wait in line sometimes if you're there on a Friday afternoon, for instance, because people are coming home from work and buying food for the weekend. Weekends like today, they're getting charcoal to have barbecues for the Super Bowl. So when you start a story and say, today I was going to the supermarket, we all understand that. So suddenly there is a picture painted. Oh, okay, I understand exactly where you're going. I get it. When you say supermarket, we all have many different images conjured up in our imaginations of what a supermarket is. We've all been there. But make it any place you're going. The doctor's office. You know, you're going shopping at Neiman Marcus, or you're going to buy expensive jewelry at Tiffany, whatever. When you say that, you conjure up all this stuff that we understand. I was driving on the freeway. We all know what it's like to drive on the freeway. We all have these shared experiences. Now, if you're telling a story and you were to say, I was driving on the freeway and I stepped in some mud. Wait, what? You said you were driving on the freeway. How could you step in mud? Well, I don't know. I just, I put my feet down and suddenly my feet were in the water and it was dirty and muddy and my feet were full of mud. Well, I thought you were driving on the freeway. I was. Well, how come suddenly your feet were muddy? See, if you were to tell a story like that, suddenly people are like, zzz, zzz, zzz. I don't know what that means. Well, this is the thing. Great storytelling is a succession of things that are being told to you that you understand, that we get. So when you were to say, if you were to say I'm driving on the freeway and then suddenly my feet were in the muddy dirt, then you're like, wait, what? What? Well, the same is true in a story of, say, motivation or emotion or something. So if you're talking about emotions, you're like, man, I was really, really, really angry because this happened. So I took out my jump rope and I started skipping down the street with a big smile on my face, singing Good Ship Lollipop. I mean, I guess you could, if you were Louis Buñuel, you could do that in a movie and people would be like, I get it, it's surreal. But for the most part, that was probably a bad example. I don't know where I came. I'm making this stuff up on the fly, so bear with me. But you know what I mean? If someone tells you they're angry, then you expect certain modes of behavior or certain actions and reactions when you hear that. Now, we all know this because we live in the real world. We know that I have a very thick wooden desk right here. We all know what that means. So when you're telling stories, it is very important that whatever story you're telling, you follow the sort of shared experiences we all have living in the real world. I was wearing a very expensive suit, and I had an hour and a half walk from where I was to where I was going, and suddenly it started to rain, and my suit was getting ruined. And I still had to walk for 85 more minutes. I don't know why I'm thinking these are not good examples, but what I mean is, if you're wearing an expensive suit and you get caught in the rain, and your beautiful expensive suit gets soaked, we know that's not a good thing. So if you're telling a story about, you're wearing a nice bespoke Savile Row suit and you get caught in the rain or something, and maybe the rain's bad for that suit, we know what the reaction, the action and the reaction would be. And stories are a succession of that. And when you're telling stories that have an unreality to them, when you bump on details, you're like, wait, what? That doesn't make any sense. Kind of like when Boba Fett wants to return to the Sarlacc pit because he's looking for his missing armor. And you wonder, well, wait a minute, Boba, when you climbed out of the Sarlacc pit and you emerged from the sand way over there, when the Sarlacc's maw was over there, and you had your armor on, I understand you were hallucinating from being digested for 1,000 years, and you might not remember the Jaw was taking your armor from you, but then why would you then believe that you had to come back to the Sarlacc pit with your beautiful fire spray starship and sit over its maw to see if you could see your armor? We're all watching this going, dude, do you not remember what we just saw? We already saw what happened to your armor. Now, I understand you don't know that the Jawas took it, but you did emerge. You don't remember that you emerged out of the sand. Maybe you didn't. You're delirious. You're getting devoured, whatever. I don't know. But do you not remember there were tentacles coming out of and a giant, Audrey 2 maw from Little Shop of Horrors? Did you not remember that was happening? So why would you do something? So Boba Fett is supposed to be a smart guy. When he does something like this, we look at it and go, you're stupid, and we don't understand. Like a rational human being or a rational Twi'lek or a rational Hutt probably would not do the same thing that Jabba the Hutt did with the Slave One over the Sarlacc pit in the Book of Boba Fett. So when something like that happens, if you're a fan of Star Wars and you're a fan of rationality and reason, you have to look at a scene like that and say, Jon Favreau, why did you write this scene? This scene doesn't make any sense at all. It strains credulity and logic. And why am I watching a character that I've loved for 42 years do something monumentally stupid? Now, when you watch a succession of these kinds of events in a row over 7 episodes, or maybe 5, because Boba Fett was barely in 2 of them, it's an accumulation of bad storytelling. Now, I think this is what we as fans, we grow accustomed to good storytelling. When you watch the original Star Wars and you watch Empire Strikes Back, there's a lot of, especially I'm not talking about the special editions, I'm talking about the original versions that came out in 77 and 1980. Not A New Hope, but Star Wars. There was no A New Hope on it when it came out in 77. Star Wars and Empire Strikes Back. When you watch those movies, the storytelling works. There might be some inconsistencies, but never a point when you go, I don't buy that. Don't buy it. But nowadays, in a lot of these venerable franchises that we've all loved for decades now, new storytellers come in, and a lot of them have thrown out this basic logic, cause and effect, action and reaction. And we, the fans, are left to wonder, wait a minute, that's not how this universe works, as we saw when it was initially set up 40 plus years ago. But you're asking us to believe something that hasn't been shown to us before, and we also know what you're showing us contradicts what was already set up by the original creators in the original version of whatever it is that we love. So then we, as fans that have watched these things a million times, we are left to wonder, why would you do something so stupid that clearly contradicts what came before? And it's not because we have to have things the way we always wanted them. It comes down to the storytelling choices that are being made are bad. They're bad storytelling choices. It doesn't matter what show it is or whatever. The choices are bad and they're nonsensical. And when you're looking at them, the question you have to ask yourself as an astute viewer is, why did these creators choose to make these decisions? What is their thinking? Why do we, as astute viewers of whatever franchise we're watching, why are we the ones that look at these things and go, yo, why are you doing this? This is clearly stupid. And so we become critical and wonder, wait a minute, you guys, not only are you flying in the face of what's been done before, but you're also flying in the face of basic logic about how things in the physical world work. And it doesn't matter if you're on Earth or if you're in a galaxy far, far away. If you're a humanoid and you walk upright on a planet that has similar gravity to Earth, things work a certain way. Or I'll give you another example. So if you were, say, given a giant prehistoric beast, or in the case of Boba Fett, a rancor, and you knew that you were going to go to war with, say, a rival faction in the middle of Mos Espa, and you were going back to your home base, your palace, and you had a choice between riding a rancor, which we've never seen you ride before, or getting your Slave One fire spray starship, which we've already seen you from the air take out a bunch of motherfuckers, why would you pick the Rancor to come back instead of your starfighter that's a lot harder to hit and it's a lot more effective at taking out ground targets? Why would you make that choice? Now, I understand some people would say, well, Rob, it's so dramatic. It's so amazing when Boba Fett rides in, wrecks shop riding that Rancor. Maybe so, but from a military, a strategic, and a storytelling point of view, it makes no sense at all. And it makes our character look dumb. Because we've already seen what he can do with his starship from the air, taking out bad guys. But instead, we're left to watch this basically ridiculous, nonsensical, strategyless thing. And we're supposed to, I guess the makers of this show are like, see, here's a Rancor and Boba Fett's riding it. Isn't that cool? Well, it could be cool if everything surrounding it made sense for him to be doing that thing at that moment. But the problem is it makes him look like a chump. It didn't work very well. And so we look at these things and we're left to say, wow, that was bad storytelling. And the funny thing is, in the case of the Book of Boba Fett, we want to love it. I've always said, I'm an easy lay for this kind of thing. Well, I want to love it. Everyone wants to love it. And yet, when we watch something like this, we're like, why does it have to be stupid, bad, and nonsensical? Why? Why can't you make it good? Don't know. Which brings me to Star Trek. Now, many people sent me this article. It's an essay, and it was on Polygon.com, and I want to read it. And let's share it. And let's share the pain, and in the sharing grow stronger, shall we? So here's the article that was, it was in Polygon. It was published yesterday. It's by Joe George. The article says, Star Trek needs less logic and more crying. I kid you not, that's what it says. Star Trek needs less logic and more crying. And thankfully, Star Trek Discovery is doing just that. Who do you want to be? Captain Michael Burnham, Sonequa Martin Green, poses that question to the United Federation of Planets Council at the climax of But to Connect, the 7th episode of Star Trek Discovery's 4th season. The Council is convened to address the presence of a new species whose arrival in the galaxy has planet-destroying consequences, perhaps intentionally. Some council members consider an aggressive response, but Burnham urges diplomacy, recognizing a unique first contact opportunity. Now, keep in mind, this, whatever this is, has destroyed planets and killed billions of people. Disagreements such as these are hardly new to Star Trek. In fact, the paradigmatic Star Trek scene involves a group of people peacefully debating possible complicated issues. But Discovery takes a decidedly unique approach to this trope. The camera glides around Burnham as she speaks, capturing every creased brow and pleading smile, underscoring her feelings even more than her words. Martin Green pours herself into the moment, lowering her voice to a whisper when being sincere and raising it an octave when marshaling hope. She finishes the speech a near wreck, barely fighting back tears. For its detractors, scenes like this are everything wrong with the series. Over its 3.5 seasons, Discovery has established itself as the most openly emotional Star Trek series in which characters talk about their trauma, give each other meaningful hugs, and shed tears in nearly every episode. Discovery explores pathos more thoroughly than any other series in the franchise. In doing so, it underscores an important aspect of humanity, one too often downplayed by the franchise. Michael Burnham is hardly the first Star Trek character to shed tears on the final frontier. After all, who can forget William Shatner stifling a cry during the Captain Kirk's eulogy for Spock in Star Trek II: The Wrath of Khan? Right from the start of Star Trek, Dr. McCoy was there at Kirk's side, countering Spock's cold logic with a passionate outburst. Many of the all-time best Star Trek episodes mine the emotional core of their characters, letting them be messy and human instead of demanding that they adhere to logic in every moment. The Deep Space Nine episode The Visitor captures the longing and joy Jake Sisko feels as he grows to an adult, only seeing his time-displaced father in short intervals every few years, while the bittersweet final moments in the life of George Kirk reverberate not only throughout 2009 Star Trek, but in all 3 reboot films. But as powerful as these moments may be, Trek usually treats empathy as a challenge, a problem to overcome for the greater good. Take the classic episode The City on the Edge of Forever, in which a delusional McCoy disrupts the time stream, inadvertently preventing the death of social worker Edith Keeler, thus allowing her to found the humanitarian movement. But her work is the unintended consequence of delaying the U.S. entry into World War II, which allows the Nazis to kill far more people than they otherwise would have. As Spock describes it in his characteristically blunt manner, Edith Keeler must die. To be sure, the death scene honors the pain and sorrow Kirk feels as he prevents McCoy from saving Keeler. But the message is clear. Because the needs of the many outweigh the needs of the few, Kirk's emotions take a back seat to the demands of logic. Similar plots recur throughout the franchise, a fact that can be traced back to Star Trek creator Gene Roddenberry. Roddenberry imagined an ideal future for humanity, which has evolved past issues such as capitalism or racism or sexism. While Roddenberry didn't explicitly outlaw emotion, he did reject plots that dealt with emotional issues, including interpersonal conflict, irrational responses to trauma, and grieving death. In a world where everyone could heal themselves and survive without struggle, he thought logic would and should always win out. Even when Trek series attended to the feelings, they either mishandle it or lose interest. As an empath and ship's counselor, Deanna Troi seemed primed to fill the McCoy role in The Next Generation, but the writers too often relegated her to describing other characters' obvious feelings. By the time Voyager's Neelix matured from a manipulative coward into an empathetic morale officer, the show had turned its attention to Hologram the Doctor and ex-Borg 7 of 9. The same problem plagues Enterprise's genial Captain Archer, who was often overshadowed by the Vulcan T'Pol. After Roddenberry died, the Star Trek shows were able to let emotions build up more throughout their shows. Deep Space Nine let its protagonists carry trauma and have romances. It even takes a nuanced look at the feelings associated with 20th century racism and PTSD. The other 3 current ongoing Trek series each embrace emotion more consistently than their predecessors. Picard uses audience nostalgia for the title character as a contrast to Starfleet's callous bureaucracy, while the young Delta Quadrant outcasts and prodigy bubble over with childlike wonder as they become the crew of an abandoned USS Protostar. Lower Decks finds comedy not just in references to the goofier parts of Trek lore, but also in the foibles of its neurotic ensigns. In each case, these series work precisely because it counters the franchise's usual focus on logic over emotion. Picard becomes the principled leader we know from TNG when he defies the Federation pragmatism to help synthetics by assembling a new crew. As much as holographic Janeway tries to get the prodigy kids in shape, the pleasure of the series comes from watching them learn how to make Starfleet regulations meaningful for themselves. Lower Decks is funny precisely because its characters undercut the standard image of the constantly professional Starfleet officer. But because these series go in a new direction with its characters, they end up being exceptions that prove the rule. Picard's ragtag crew, the kids on the Protostar, and the Lower Decks goofballs indulge their feelings. Members of the real, proper Starfleet do not. Of the current ongoing Trek series, these real, proper Starfleet personnel can only be found on Discovery, and in many ways, the actions of Captain Burnham and her crew carry more weight than those of even Enterprise Captain Kirk or Picard, as the USS Discovery A plays a central role in rebuilding the United Federation of Planets in the 32nd century. It's a flagship vessel both for the show and the greater series. Viewers have to take notice when Discovery breaks from the standard Star Trek portrayal of human emotion. One of the clearest examples of the difference in Trek's approach to emotional issues can be found in the Season 2 TNG episode The Measure of a Man. Taking the form of a courtroom drama, the episode centers around a debate about Commander Data's personhood status, prompted when Starfleet defines him as mere property. Captain Picard argues for Data's sentience, while Commander Riker has been ordered by Judge Advocate General Philippa Louvois to contend that Data is property, fit for experimentation by Commander Bruce Maddox. Unruly feelings abound. Riker feels guilty for prosecuting his crewmate. Picard and Philippe Louvois have complicated feelings from a past romance, and Maddox has aspirations for his experiments. During the trial, Picard passionately states his case, with Patrick Stewart bringing Shakespearean gravitas to the speeches he delivers. "Starfleet was founded to seek out new life," he declares in his booming baritone, pointing at Data. "Well, there it sits!" But while Picard states his case lovingly and movingly, it's a fundamentally logical argument that he wins with. If Starfleet defines life according to forms it knows, and if Starfleet exists to seek out new forms of life, then it must alter its definition according to those new forms. Moreover, everyone involved must overcome their own emotions to accept Picard's claim. Arguably the first great episode of The Next Generation, The Measure of a Man crystallized the focus on logic found in TOS and the early movies. From that episode forward, Trek would make explicit what was often implied. Evolved humans do not use feelings to solve their problems. The Discovery episode, But to Connect, has clear parallels to The Measure of a Man, but the more recent episode emphasizes feelings over reason. Once again, the characters debate the distinction between personhood and property when Discovery's computer Zora gains sentience, and Adira even echoes Picard when they call Zora an entirely new life form. But while there is certainly a logical structure to the various positions, director Lee Rose focuses on emotions. Arguing they should follow Starfleet protocol and put Zora into a new form, Stamets recounts the fear and mistrust he feels when she refuses a direct order from Captain Burnham to protect the crew. Contending that Zora should stay in Discovery, Adira and Gray relate their own feelings of rejection and acceptance for failing to fit social standards. Even Zora describes her affinity toward the crew and her worries for their safety. In fact, Zora and her supporters win the debate not with a steel-tight syllogism, but with an ethos appeal. While investigating Zora's memory structure, Adira finds a new section which they identify as Zora's subconscious. Within this field are images of Discovery's crew connecting with and caring for one another. In part, this fact wins over Stamets and Kovich because the existence of a subconscious means that Zora cannot be considered artificial intelligence. But as the music and camera movements make clear, empathy for Zora drives Stamets' decision. For some of Discovery's critics, this plot resolves too easily, the equivalent of hugging it out, instead of facing the issue. If they apply the same level of rigor to the fallacies in Measure of Man, I cannot say. But that reading misplaces the focus of the Zora debate. The goal of the debate isn't to comb through legal proceedings, but to allow the participants to have their feelings recognized and validated. "It feels marvelous being seen," Zora says after her official status is changed. In these scenes, Discovery revises the utopian future that has always been at the heart of Star Trek. The humans of the future reach their best selves not by overcoming their emotions, but by recognizing them and caring for them in themselves and others. Discovery insists that empathy is an effective way to seek out new life and new civilizations. Michael Burnham asks the Federation Council, "Who do we want to be?" Discovery answers boldly, firmly, and yes, tearfully, fully human, both logical and emotional. So there you have it. Here's an article that is arguing for hugging it out, for the emotions that we all need to find. Now, let's go back to storytelling for a minute. Starfleet, as we know it, is a quasi-military organization. Starship full of hundreds of people that have very specific jobs to do. And they're the best of the best at what they do. Now, I've always understood that people in Star Trek were fully realized human beings. They were people that grew up in a post-scarcity society. And they did understand their feelings and emotions. And they did understand empathy. That's why they're on board a starship, to seek out new life and new civilizations. However, it is in fact a starship that has to run on discipline. Because if you don't have discipline, if you don't have a chain of command, at any one moment, you're going to get blown out of the sky. We live in a world where I think people are starting to put their own emotions and feelings ahead of the pragmatic realities of living in a real world where big pieces of wood matter. You know, you need to survive in this world by understanding that it's not a place that cares about your feelings. Now, you can care about other people's feelings, and you can care about your own feelings, but in order to survive, our universe is indifferent. Our universe does not care whether you feel happy or sad today. If an 11,000-mile long giant space amoeba is traversing through the galaxy and it is consuming all of the energy of living organisms, indeed planets full of life, it doesn't matter how you feel. What matters is that you do your fucking job, or this fucking amoeba is going to consume your home planet and kill everyone you know. If you're going to cry about it on the bridge, or you need to hug it out, or you need to decide whether or not, I don't know, I just need to talk about my trauma. And of course, in the 23rd century, in a post-scarcity environment where people are self-actualized and we're from a utopian civilization, why is it that every single main character has trauma in their lives? Why does Lieutenant Uhura on on Strange New Worlds, we find out her family was killed? It's become a trope. Let's give all these characters trauma because, hey, in the future must be the same as today, right? Everybody has to cry and be self-actualized, and this is going to help us better understand the universe. Well, I would maintain that by the time you get to the time of the original series, and remember, Star Trek Discovery and Strange New Worlds take place before the original series, but not by many years. By this time, people are far more evolved. They don't need to cry at the drop of a hat. They don't need to get hugged. Why? Because they're stronger than that. Showing emotion isn't weak, but showing emotion on a military vessel in deep space when your reactions rely upon you to be focused on your crew, focused on your job, not focused on yourself. That's what great Star Trek is. We live in a society right now where all we do is gaze at our own belly button lint. We talk about who we are and what we are, and let me tell you how I'm going to feel, or let me tell you how I want you to address me. That you need to make sure that I get to feel the way I want to feel all the time. Now, I want to call myself this, and you better call me what I want you to call me, otherwise I'll feel bad. That might be true, but how is that going to help you avoid the Doomsday Machine or the Gorn if they're attacking Cestus 3? How do your feelings and how do what you want to be called by everyone else, why do you get to impose what it is you want on the rest of us? Now, I have no problem right now. You want me to call you something, I'll call you anything you want. But that's because I would like to do that. I'm a polite person. But in a quasi-military structure, does everybody just get to be whoever and whatever they want to be? How are you going to have discipline? How are you going to tell me a believable story on a starship traveling in the far-flung reaches of space if every single person at the drop of a hat can feel sad and talk about what's wrong in their lives, and please let me tell you how much I feel? This is not believable storytelling. This does not work. It doesn't work for me, and I don't think it works for a lot of people. Why? Because in a military environment, that doesn't work. It undermines the chain of command. It undermines your ability to trust the person next to you. You need to trust the person next to you that they have resolve, they have steel resolve in getting their job done. I need to make sure that you're not going to break down in a crying blubber of tears when the shit gets real. And yet, Star Trek now wants us all to believe that we are better off if we can talk about, look, human beings have empathy. Being empathetic and understanding how to talk to somebody and relate to somebody, that's part of your fucking job as a Starfleet officer. It's par for the course. But when you're watching a science fiction adventure show that every episode takes time to sit down and has talking about feelings and we should do it this way, or oh my God, let's take a computer system and because the plot says so, let's turn this computer into another cliche. It's artificial intelligence that, oh my God, it has a heart and a soul. It's the Tin Man, yet again, another variation that we've seen 100 million times. Zora's now Roy Batty. Zora's seen things we people wouldn't believe. She's probably seen attack ships on fire off the shoulder of Orion. I'm sure Zora's seen C-beam glittering in the dark near the Tannhauser Gates. And you know what? She'll probably tell you, all those moments could be left in time, or lost in time, like tears in the rain if you turn me off or something. Even the fucking artificial intelligence that runs the goddamn ship has to have feelings on this show. Because God forbid, it can't just be a computer system or an AI that enjoys who and what it is. Now, I understand they have to marry it up to some short trek in the future, whatever. But the thing is, this is not the world that we live in or should live in. Everybody needs to be in touch with their feelings. But you know what? When the job needs to get finished, your feelings aren't going to help you get that job done. Your empathy for your fellow man when the bullets are whizzing by you, you can't just stand up in a foxhole and go, yo, wait, hang on. Come on. I mean, I really feel bad. Please, it's so loud. Can you just stop your shooting? You know what's going to happen? Ba-bam! The Silver Sphere is going to get you, man. It is going to get you. Modern Star Trek is telling us that if we're in touch with our feelings, we will conquer the galaxy. We will not. And while feelings and empathy are important, modern Star Trek is betraying us and telling us that, hey, one, we all have trauma, and all we need is our co-workers to help us get through it. We'll hug it out at a Federation Council meeting. You know what? Who knows? That giant space anomaly that's killed billions of people. I mean, their trauma's over, right? Like, they're not here anymore. So let's talk about this. Let's think about this. What are we going to do about it? Now, I'm sure that eventually at the end of the season, we're going to find out that, well, it was just all a big misunderstanding. Can't we all just get along? And I don't know. Modern Star Trek is lying to you. It's telling bad stories. It's telling stories whose lessons will get you killed later in life if you listen to them. The thing about classic Star Trek, the original series, and Kirk even said it in Star Trek V, I need my pain. I need it. It forged me into the person I am now. And if I didn't have that pain, I wouldn't be as good of a Starfleet captain as I am. We need it. Hugging it out ain't going to help. And yet, apparently in the modern day, as long as we feel better, I guess that just leads to better storytelling, doesn't it? I don't believe that, but some people do. Anyway, this is where we're at with modern Star Trek. Not a fan.